Trump is hinting at new research into autism and vaccinations. It's a myth that there is a link between the two. Now, we know that because hundreds of studies around the world have debunked the claim, according to Mayo Clinic.
In the US will soon be advised not to prescribe the painkiller paracetamol to pregnant women because he says that the use of it in pregnancy is actually linked to an increase in autism. But he didn't really provide much scientific evidence to back up these claims.
Sometimes it takes just one bold comment to shake the world. That's exactly what happened when Donald Trump stepped into the heated debate about vaccines and autism. His words didn't just stir whispers, they ignited arguments in living rooms, echoed through hospitals, and even rippled into politics. Science had already settled the question. Vaccines do not cause autism. Yet with one statement, Trump brought back old fears and doubts. Now the big question is, why does this debate keep coming back? And how much damage did his claim really do? Let's find out. Step by step, Trump's bold claim and its roots. Long before Donald Trump became president, he was already stirring doubts about vaccines. On talk shows, in interviews, and later on social media, he often claimed that children were getting too many shots too soon, suggesting that these large doses might overwhelm their small bodies and harm their development. According to Al Jazeera's report, his words weren't original. They echoed the same concerns that vaccine skeptics had been repeating for years, especially about the MMR vaccine, which protects against measles, mumps, and rubella. But coming from Trump, a figure with massive influence and a devoted following, these doubts carried a much louder echo. Suddenly, ideas once confined to fringe groups were reaching millions who had never paid attention to such claims before. But where did these fears really come from? The trail goes back to 1998. When a controversial study first claimed a link between the MMR vaccine and autism. That research was later exposed as not only false, but also deeply unethical. The lead author lost his medical license, and the medical journal that published it took the extraordinary step of retracting the study altogether. Yet by then, the damage had already been done. The story spread quickly through parenting groups, online forums, and communities that were already skeptical of mainstream medicine. Even after being debunked, the idea refused to fade, lingering in whispers and conversations among worried parents. So when Trump repeated those same doubts years later, he wasn't introducing a brand new concern. He was breathing new life into an old myth. With his platform, that once fringe theory exploded into mainstream conversation, gaining more attention than it ever had before. What had started as a single false study was now amplified by one of the most powerful voices in the world. The medical community pushes back doctors and scientists didn't just sit back quietly. They pushed back with force. For them, this wasn't just a debate. It was about protecting trust in medicine and the health of millions. Over and over, they repeated the same truth. There's no scientific link between vaccines and autism. CNN reported massive studies involving hundreds of thousands of children across multiple countries, and every single one reached the same conclusion. The message couldn't have been clearer. Vaccines are safe, they are effective, and they do not cause autism. In fact, the scientific evidence was so overwhelming that in the eyes of the medical community, this conversation should have ended years ago. But Trump's words gave the issue a fresh stage and a louder microphone. Almost overnight, parents who had always trusted their pediatricians began to second-guess them. Doctors found themselves facing the same questions they thought had been answered long ago, repeating the same reassurances to anxious families. It was like history looping back, only this time amplified by headlines and social media. The science hadn't changed, but the conversation had, and fear was suddenly louder than facts. That moment revealed a sobering truth. Public trust is fragile. Even the strongest research can be overshadowed when a powerful voice stirs doubt. Old fears that should have been buried were revived, and a debate that science had settled was pulled back into the spotlight, proving that in the court of public opinion, emotion can sometimes outrun evidence. Why the debate refused to die? If the science was so clear, then why did the debate keep resurfacing? The BBC pointed out that numbers and statistics, no matter how strong, don't always carry the same emotional weight as personal stories. For many parents, the timing was enough. If their child's autism symptoms appeared after a vaccine appointment, it felt like direct proof. Even when science showed no connection, those personal experiences were powerful, emotional, and almost impossible to dismiss. So when someone like Trump echoed those concerns, he didn't just repeat doubts, he amplified them, giving raw fears a louder voice and new energy. People often trust what they see or feel more than what they read in a research paper. Trump didn't need fresh evidence or new data. His influence alone made old anxieties feel urgent again. Parents who had never questioned vaccines suddenly began to wonder, what if the experts aren't telling us everything? What if something has been hidden from us all along? That single seed of suspicion was enough to grow into a larger wave of mistrust. In the end, the debate wasn't running on science at all. It was running on fear, emotion, and doubt. On one side stood decades of research proving vaccines safe. On the other stood influential voices and deeply personal stories. And in that uneven fight, facts often felt weaker than feelings. That's why the conversation refused to die. Because once trust is shaken, even the strongest evidence struggles to win it back. Political shockwaves and public health concerns. The impact of Trump's remarks didn't stop at family dinner tables. It reached the highest levels of government. Once he entered the White House, health officials grew concerned that his past statements could influence national policy. The New York Times reported that Trump even met with known vaccine skeptics, raising alarms that official health guidelines might weaken under his administration. At the same time, measles outbreaks were making a comeback in parts of the United States, a reminder of just how quickly hesitation around vaccines could unravel years of progress. The timing couldn't have been worse. Political influence was colliding with public health at a moment when diseases thought to be under control were resurfacing. This wasn't just about one person's opinion anymore. It was about trust in the system. Public health thrives on confidence. When enough people believe in vaccines, herd immunity protects even the most vulnerable, like newborns and those who can't be vaccinated. But when that trust is shaken, the whole community is at risk. Pediatricians and policymakers stressed that vaccines were never just an individual choice. They were a shield for society. Trump's influence, whether he meant it or not, rattled that shield and reminded everyone how fragile it really is. In the end, the controversy showed that health debates aren't fought only in labs or hospitals. They're fought in politics, on public stages, and in the weight carried by a leader's words. The lasting echo of Trump's words. Even years later, the ripple effect of Trump's comments hasn't faded away. Misinformation spreads far faster than the truth. A rumor or doubt, once repeated on a big stage, can sink deep into public memory. Even if experts rush to correct it with strong evidence, the correction often feels weaker than the original claim. And in this case, Trump's words had already traveled far, amplified by media headlines, social networks, and conversations in homes across the country. By the time science tried to catch up, the doubt was already planted. This is why the debate still lingers today. The argument isn't really about whether vaccines cause autism. That question has been answered again and again by decades of research. The real issue is trust. Public trust in medicine is fragile, and once it's shaken, repairing it takes time and patience. Trump's comments tapped into existing fears, and for many, they created a sense of what if that no study or statistic could immediately erase. And that's the bigger challenge. Science can prove facts. But rebuilding faith requires more than data. It requires trust, compassion, and leadership. The story of Trump, vaccines, and autism goes far beyond medicine. It is a story about the power of influence, the fragility of trust, and the way fear can sometimes outweigh facts. Science has made the answer clear. Vaccines do not cause autism. But Trump's remarks proved that facts alone don't always win. When fear, politics, and public doubt mix, the result can outlast the evidence itself. So here's the real challenge for all of us. How do we rebuild trust in science when a single powerful voice can so easily shake it? Thank you for watching. If you found this important, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so more people can join this important conversation.